Welcome back to Training Muscle Lengths Part 2. If you didn't know it before, you know it now. Your legs have biceps. We're going to talk through the general structure and function of all the hamstring muscles, as well as the short versus long positions and how to train them. This is the biceps femoris. We're looking at the posterior or back side of the leg here. Biceps femoris has two heads, short and long. You can see the long one here really well, and the short one sort of underneath. Both short and long head insert into the tibia and fibia, but only the long head crosses the hip. That means that while both the long and short heads of the biceps femoris can flex the knee, only the long head can extend the hip. While we're talking about hammies, we'll also point out the semitendinosus and the membranosus, which is sort of underneath. Both of those also extend the hip and flex the knee. Easy way to remember which is the membranosus is medial, which is closer to the midline. So when we think about muscle lengths, we can kind of imagine muscle as sort of a rubber band. The 2 points at which that muscle originates and inserts are fixed. It's anchored to the bone and cannot change unless some sort of devastating injury happens. When the joint it crosses is extended like this, the muscle gets longer, literally. And then when that joint is flexed, like right here, the muscle shortens. And we like to use a rubber band analogy because if you think about stretching a rubber band a ton, there's going to be a lot of tension on it. The same is true for training muscles in lengthened positions. There's very high tension. That high tension is why so much value is placed on training muscles in lengthened positions when it comes to hypertrophy goals. So the longest that the hamstrings can possibly be is going to be in some sort of movement like an RDL. You can imagine the tension you feel when you're trying to touch your toes. In these hip hinge movements, the knee is extended and the hip is flexed. So those hamstrings, like our rubber bands, are as stretched out as they can possibly be. Same is true on a back extension. You can see the knee is extended, hip is flexed at the bottom. Same movement pattern, just different implement. When we talk about fully shortened, we're looking at some sort of a lying leg curl. Here the opposite is true. So the hip is extended or mostly extended, and the knee is fully flexed. If we remember, the hamstrings extend the hip and flex the knee. Both those things are happening to their fullest extent, so that muscle is as short as it can possibly be. It gets a little confusing when we start to talk about a seated leg curl machine. If you take this image and just rotate it 90 degrees to the left, you can see that this is the same body position as an RDL. But instead of an RDL where the motion is going to occur about the hips, here the motion is going to occur about the knee. You'll see people talk about which one is better between an RDL and a seated leg curl. But a key factor in that discussion is that the gastrocnemius, or part of the calf, actually is a knee flexor as well. So when people compare this against an RDL, they're not really making an apples to apples comparison. So what's the moral of the story? If you want big beefy hammies like this guy, use hip hinge movements like an RDL or a back extension to train the lengthened position, and use a lying leg curl to train the shortened position. Leave a comment with what other muscles you want to learn about, and follow to learn more about the science of training.